Hi, Rex. I still have you on mute.
How are you doing?
Good. How you doing?
Great, thank you.
Good. Good to see you.
Good to be seen.
Long time no see. Let me just let everybody in here. Hi, Dan.
Hi, how are you?
Good. How you doing?
Just fine. Looking forward to today's presentation.
Good to see a lot of familiar names.
Hey, Rex.
Hey, Randy.
How you doing?
Fine, thank you.
Rather muted, dare I say, subdued shirt today.
Well, you know, it is the LAI crowd.
I was hoping, something from your Rain Spooner rayon collection.
This is still pretty, let's see if you get it. It's still pretty good when you just get a good shot.
That's what passes for formal wear. That's formal wear in Honolulu.
Bill's got the right kind of shirt. Shelby's probably wearing a clip-on tie.
He probably hasn't showered, which is why he's not showing us his face. I think we're waiting for John Leonard to come on. Here we go.
Good afternoon, everybody. Sorry I'm a little tardy. My apologies. Welcome to the September 22nd Lambda Alpha Zoom meeting for our monthly COVID presentation. Very pleased to have Rex Hime with us. I apologize for being a few minutes tardy. I had the wrong link. Hopefully everybody else is on board. My name is John Leonard. I'm the president of Lambda Alpha for 2020, and I'm very pleased to be your host, if you will. I wanted to hit on a couple of subjects before we start, and wanted to share with you that the board of directors of Lambda Alpha Sacramento just met, and we had a very productive meeting covering a lot of ground. We all miss the opportunity to be together with you at the Sutter Club over lunch and having our social interaction. It's disappointing, but we're all adapting to COVID-19, hoping that we'll be have this in our rearview mirror sometime soon. I wanted to share with you that because we don't have our luncheons on a monthly basis, which are a component of our financial health, that the chapter is in fact adapting financially and cutting costs everywhere that we can. And but I would like to suggest to you that we are running in the negative, but we still have we're still financially sound. We have great leadership in Louise Walker as our finance chair and treasurer, and she's given us some guidance going forward for 2021. I'll make this short. We are going to be sending out membership renewals for Lambda Alpha Sacramento beginning in the next 2 months, month and a half, and encourage everyone to consider signing up promptly so we know where we stand. And we're going to be offering sponsorships again this year, as well as on our monthly Zoom meetings. We've had some great content over the last 6 months and great participation. We have, I believe, over 70 today have signed up to hear Rex Hime discuss with us Prop 15, and we're very pleased about that. We're going to be asking for sponsorships, both annual as well as for luncheon sponsorships, and would like to ask you politely if you would consider participating in supporting Lambda Alpha, as we have essentially seen our cash flow whittled away by not being able to meet directly for our monthly luncheons. That being said, please do sign up when you receive your membership renewal, and we look forward to Rex Hime's presentation today. With that, I'll turn it over to Randy Getz and have him make the introduction, please. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Rex is the president and CEO of the California Business Properties Association. He's a native Californian, graduated from UC Davis, go Aggies, with a BA in political science, and then got his law degree from UC Davis School of Law. And in his career has demonstrated amply that there is life after law school. He has served as the presidential as well as the California State Assembly representative on the Tahoe Regional Planning Agency, and also most recently served as a regent of the University of California. The California Business Properties Association has a membership of more than 10,000 different entities, and it's the designated legislative advocate for a wide variety of real estate related organizations, including, but not limited to, the International Council of Shopping Centers, the California chapters of the National Association of Industrial and Office Properties, the Building Owners and Managers Association of California, the Institute of Real Estate Management, the Retail Industry Leaders Association, the California Association of Local Economic Development, the Association of Corporate Real Estate Executives of Northern and Southern California, and the National Association of Real Estate Investment Trusts. He's been involved in all statewide school construction bonds. He has served on either the steering committee or the finance committee for these entities. And these are measures that holistically have generated approximately $50 billion for K through 12 and higher education facility construction. Rex has been involved in the drafting of major water bond efforts and has worked for Proposition 204 in 1994 and Proposition 13 in 1999, as well as Proposition 84 in 2006, where he served on the steering and executive committees, as well as the finance co-chair. Rex is going to be talking to us today about a ballot initiative, Prop 15, which addresses the split roll, and it's my pleasure to welcome him to LAI today. Thank you, Rex.
Thanks, Randy. And I got to make sure that you do a great job of reading the resume the way my mom wrote it. So thank you. And thanks, John, for both of you giving me the opportunity to be here today. This is particularly special for me being an LAI founding member of this chapter. So I'm very honored to be here and be able to talk about what is really probably the most consequential measure and most impactful measure of the last 20 years that we've had to vote on. And that's Proposition 15. And I'm going to talk about what it does, who's supporting, who are the opposition, what's its impact on the economy, what's its impact on real estate, and what does it mean for the future of California. To be able to talk about Prop 15, we really have to go back to 1978 and talk about Proposition 13 for a moment. The Constitution of California has always taxed all properties the same way. They've always been treated as one. There's never been a differentiation. In 1978, the voters of California went to the polls and overwhelmingly adopted Proposition 13, which did not change how properties were taxed, but the system whereby they're going to be taxed. And what it did was very simply, and I know I'm looking at some of the younger faces on here, believe it or not, in 1978, some folks were actually losing their homes. Home values were going up quite rapidly. Assessors were driving around the neighborhoods, and a home that somebody had bought for $11,500 was suddenly worth $40,000 or $50,000, and they found themselves in a dire strait. So what Prop 13 did was it established a base year. That is when you buy it, that's your purchase price. 1% of that becomes the tax, that's your annual tax, and that can be increased up to 2% a year. It applied the same on commercial and agriculture and everything. What does Prop 15 do? And by the way, the name of it is California Schools and Local Communities Funding Act of 2020. Also a little background, there was a previous measure because they circulated two different initiatives and got the signatures for both of them, and they both qualified. The first one had the same name, except it was the Funding Act of 2018. They did not get qualified in time enough to make it onto the 2018 ballot, so they had to be put off to the 2020 ballot. At that point, the California Teachers Association and some other groups got involved and pushed big forward to get the signatures. They needed about 900,000 to qualify for the 2020 ballot. What it does is it changes the Constitution of California and creates what is known as a split roll tax property system. That means that it creates some properties differently than it creates others. Prop 13 protections for commercial real estate and non-residential property are eliminated. So no longer do you have the certainty. It then taxes commercial and industrial property and non-residential property at the fair market value, the highest and best use. And it requires a reassessment every 3 years or within every 3 years, never any longer than 3 years. So you have a continuing update of what your property tax is going to be. When it comes to mixed use, what it'll do will impact the commercial portion of those mixed use projects. It does impact agriculture. Initially, the proponents thought it did not impact agriculture, and that was one of their positions. However, when you looked into the tax code, it turned out that while it didn't reassess the land where wheat or radishes or lettuce was grown, it does reassess the land where you have vineyards or orchards or trees of any sort, or packaging facilities or processing plants, or any of the places where you house your equipment. All those would have to be reassessed. It does two other things which are very interesting. One of it is currently when you make an appeal of the assessment, as you know, the burden of proof is on the county assessor. Even then, it's quite a challenge to get through that process. This turns that on its head so that the burden of proof is on the property owner, another hurdle. And it also allows the legislature, with a 50% plus one vote, to change and make interpretations of this act as it relates to the new process. This is the first time the legislature has been able to do that since 1978. And it'll raise somewhere between $7.5 and $12+ billion each year. And then that money is designed to go to 40% to education and 60% to local government. And you know, you might say, well, gee, this isn't like a bad idea. So who's behind Proposition 15? The three major proponents are, first off, the California Teachers Association, the CTA, the Service Employees International Union, or SEIU, purple shirts to many, and interesting enough, the Chan Zuckerberg Foundation. You might say, why does Facebook care about this? And most political observers believe it's because they want to be liked by the more progressive elements that are growing up here within California. They have now raised about, on their way to $30 to $40 million. And they believe that Prop 15 will take this money and what it'll do, it'll mostly impact billionaires, according to their arguments. It'll make property that's commercial finally pay its fair share, according to their arguments. It'll make the largest businesses pay more, according to their arguments. And it ends a loophole that they've defined as a problem in California. We'll go back to all those, but also now we want to talk about what has the opposition said about this and who opposes Proposition 15. Well, 15 has been able to bring together quite a broad-based coalition to oppose this measure, way beyond the normal business community. For instance, the California County Assessors have taken an opposed position. And you might ask why they've done that. It's because they calculated that this measure will cost $1 billion to implement and $400 to $500 million each year thereafter to make sure that it works. They believe it kind of is almost unworkable and it's way too expensive a process to establish. The California Farm Bureau and all the other ag groups have come out of opposition against it because of its impact on agriculture and the kind of costs that they'll have to bear, which of course get passed on to consumers. The Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association has come out opposed to it, and that might be self-evident. They believe that tampering with Prop 13 in any way is bad, but more importantly, they believe that all of the proponents who have been on record for years and years, including lawsuits against Proposition 13, are committed to ending the protections of Proposition 13, even for homeowners in California. So they believe that this Prop 15 is just the first step. The NAACP, and a large number of social justice groups, Willie Brown, former mayor of San Francisco, Antonio Villagrosa, former mayor of Los Angeles, have all come out in opposition to it. And you again would probably say why. And they believe that its impact on small businesses are going to be devastating to their communities in particular. And interesting enough, some private sector unions have also come out in opposition to it. And we'll come back and explain that one in a few moments. Something else that people look at when they're analyzing ballot measures is who hasn't taken a position. It's easy to look at the pros and look at the cons, but then who hasn't said anything, yes, yay or nay? Well, as you know, it's supposed to be 40% to schools and 60% to local government. And yet the California County Supervisors Association and the California League of Cities both refused to endorse this measure, even though they'd be substantial recipients. And the California School Boards Association also refused to endorse this position, this measure, even though they would be beneficiaries as well. And I mentioned the private sector unions that were coming on board. And this also blends in as to what would be the impact on commercial real estate. For commercial real estate, the certainty of taxation is a value. And as you know, California has a lot of challenges to our value to begin with, but the certainty of Prop 13 has always been one of those that has been considered a positive. With that certainty gone, CalPERS estimated that their California real estate portfolio would lose a value of between 3 and 5%. And so the private sector unions, looking at that kind of statistics, said, wait a minute, why do I want to support a measure that backfills pensions, and we'll talk about that in a moment, for the CTA and the SEIU, when my pension funds are going to take a hit in their value? That's why they've joined the opposition. Now, you say, well, pensions, it says it's going to education and local government. The proponents have made that very clear. The opponents on the other side have said, other than saying where it goes, there is no guidance whatsoever. There is no guidance to hire more teachers, to reduce class size. There's no guidance to do certain things that it is going to go to healthcare workers, as they say in their advertisements, or anything else. And most political observers and most of those around the Capitol believe that this money will be used to backfill the pension funds, both the CTA and the SEIU. What are the arguments that the no side uses? They talk about the small business impact. They also talk about that now isn't the right time. The proponents talk about that this is very much the right time, because with COVID-19 impact, that we definitely need to have more money available for schools and local government. The contrary argument to that is that small business is already teetering in California. Many are never going to be back. Many restaurants that we've enjoyed for years are never going to be back. And that in many instances, the tax increase will be passed on through rent increases to their tenants by landlords, and the cost of food will be impactful, et cetera. And so the small business will be the most impacted, negatively impacted, of all those involved in the California economy. The Ledge Analyst Office of the state has indicated that we could lose anywhere between 85,000 and 130,000 jobs should this become reality. The opponents argue that, well, when you talk about this is the right time because we need to get money for our local governments that are struggling, our schools that are struggling, our et cetera, things that are all struggling because there's no resources coming in because businesses have been shut down. The reality is that none of this money will be realized until probably 2024 or 2025, when the first round of new assessments goes out and taxes are being paid. If we haven't straightened out the impacts of this COVID thing by 2024, 25, the least of our problems are going to be money. So there's a lot of folks who believe that it is not going to be realized in a manner that it will be effective to solve any of our current problems. So there's, as you can see, there's pros and cons. Certainly there's an argument that education in California can always use more money. The voters of California, in all their polling, says, yes, we're not happy with the product, but if we just give them a little more money, maybe they'll be better. And so the issue there is, if that's something you believe, then maybe how you want to vote. It's going to be a very hard-fought campaign. I know that the proponents have unlimited resources. The opponents have a substantial amount of war chest that they're putting forward. You may have seen the commercials on both sides, and we'll be seeing a lot more of them as the airwaves and commuters, et cetera, start to fill up in the last few days. So I would be more than happy to start taking any kind of questions. Randy, are you going to do that, or how do we do this?
Well, the first question, we can either do it through chat, or we don't have that so many people that people can't, raise your hand and we can have questions. So feel free to contact us on chat. The first is from Isabel D'Amico, who's wondering what are the polls indicating for the proposition?
Well, the polls have been sort of here and there, and so let's start and go back. The Public Policy Institute of California has polled the issue of split roll tax for many, many years. 3 months ago, they did a survey which used just the specific language of this measure, and it was polling at 53% yes, and so it was passing because this measure only needs 50% plus one. They released a second poll just the last part of last week, excuse me, and it showed that the measure was now polling at 51%. So that's not the right way to be going into the last 45 days of the campaign. Internal polling, and for full disclosure, I think you may have guessed I'm probably involved in the no side, but internal polling for us showed it polling at about 53 before we release any of our campaign messaging against it, et cetera. And that if we run the kind of campaign that we're expecting and targeting, we can get this measure down to as little as 45 or 44% support.
Greg Aguirre let us know that Larry Stone, who is the Santa Clara County assessor, has come out against Proposition 15 as well. Yes,
and thank you for that. Larry Stone, who, by the way, is an avid opponent of Proposition 13 and who really wants to see it done away with, is very active in the No on 15 campaign and actually is speaking around the state on the issue.
Randy,
Yes,
John Leonard. I think you said at the beginning of your presentation, Rex, that the cutoff was, I think it's 3 million in current assessed value is the point, or is it 2 million?
It's a 3 million assessment, but it's kind of smoke and mirrors on that. So for instance, if you have a piece of property that is valued at, let's say 1.7 million, but you have a second piece of property that's valued at, let's say 1.5 million, that's cumulative. If you read the measure, if you own more than one property, they take all those properties and they add them up together.
Whether they're adjacent or not, or they have to be adjacent, or does it have anything to do with it?
No, it doesn't be adjacent, just the same ownership. Or if you're in a series of partnerships that has properties, they add those all together. So the cumulative value could be above 3 million, and then all of the properties, even though they are less than 3 million, would be reassessed.
Wow. So that's under the current assessed value at this time. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. One other one. I've also read that there is some concern about the inevitability of residential being dragged into this if it were successful. Obviously, that's that's one of the things that the proponents of the ballot measure have suggested is not on their agenda. But is there either polling or information on that as it relates to single family or multifamily?
Well, there's no polling on that, but I can tell you this, that every single organization that is supporting this measure has for years, and we have on record, and I can make it available through Suzanne or whoever, on record as recently as July of this last year, where they have called for ending the protections of Proposition 13 for all properties in California. And as I indicated in my remarks, some of them go back as far as 1979 and 80, filing lawsuits against Proposition 13 being implemented. And let me digress for just a moment. One of the things that because of what I have done for many, many years here in the Capitol, it irritates me the most is the issue of the quote loophole. There is no loophole. There is a anomaly in the measure that has allowed on some occasions folks, generally not those involved in real estate, high-tech folks and whatnot, movie stars to hire fancy pants attorneys and to go in there and to work the manipulation of the sale of that property to them in a manner that they do not trigger reassessment. So 8 years ago, the business community went to a gentleman named Tom Amiano. Tom Amiano at that time was the assembly member from San Francisco and proudly proclaimed himself as being the most liberal member of the legislature, and someone, by the way, who was committed, like Larry Stone, to doing away with Proposition 13 in California. He carried a bill that would have prevented anybody from being able to manipulate the system in a manner that would allow them to escape reassessment. I sat shoulder to shoulder with those who are now on the other side on supporting split roll tax. And all of us argued in favor of this measure together, and it passed out of the assembly unanimously. Goes over to the Senate side, and the political folks at the CTA said, wait a minute, if we do this, we eliminate our real argument that we like to use about we're going to close these loopholes and get these fat cats who are abusing the system. And so on the Senate side, the bill died. And every time we've reintroduced it since, the bill has died. And so what could have been fixed legislatively almost a decade ago was blocked by the people who are now using the term loophole and trying to get Prop 15 passed.
Does the cumulative ownership clause need to be associated with a given household, or is it a given entity? In other words, if somebody's got the $1.5 million, the $1.7 million, $2 million properties, but each is owned by a different entity, does the cumulative rule obtain, or do they all have to be owned by the same entity?
My understanding, Randy, if there are different entities, but you're in them, let's just say you're the guy that's in them and you're all three of them, that would trigger reassessment.
And did you say that multi-housing apartment complexes are or are not covered by this initiative?
None of the residential type things are covered. Apartments are not covered, condos are not covered. In a multi-use, mixed-use building, let's say, if you had a floor of retail and a floor or two of offices and the 3 floors of housing, those 3 floors of housing would not be reassessed. The assessors will have to figure out how to reassess just the bottom 3 or 4.
That'll be simple, by the way.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
I'm sorry, I was chiming in. That will not be easy to do.
No, there's a lot of things that's why some of the reasons the assessors are opposed to this, that it's going to be really challenging to be able to make work.
So let me ask a couple of following questions to that. The first would be, this appears to be a discriminatory piece of legislation. And so
John,
what's the,
Sorry, can you mute, please?
Mute on your phone, please, or something, if there's noise coming out of you.
can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. This would appear to be discriminatory because it's excluding certain categories of real estate, which doesn't make sense. I mean, part of the legality and constitutionality of Prop 13 was that it was holistic and omnibus. There weren't, exclusions other than for, let's say, charitable entities or something, nonprofits. But this is different. So how do the proponents justify the inherent discriminatory nature of the initiative? And then secondly, among people who are ostensibly knowledgeable, what are the thoughts regarding legal challenges to invalidate this in the event that it passes?
Well, let's take the first question, first half of that question, and that is, this is a constitutional measure. And so therefore they would be changing the Constitution about how taxes would be applicable. So that's certainly within the purview of the people of the state to do that with their Constitution. Not being a legal scholar and having not played one on TV, I would say that should this pass, there would undoubtedly be some challenges to it. I'm not sure what the basis of it would be, and I'm not sure that they would be successful. There was a ruling in San Francisco recently, well, last year, that a measure which traditionally has always required a 2/3 vote approval for the voters to approve something before it would kick in to be a tax, received less than 51%. And it was challenged, and the lower courts all in San Francisco said, no, it's okay. And it went to the Supreme Court, who just last week told us they weren't going to hear the case, which means the lower court rulings hold for the time being. So I'm not sure what is or isn't going to be constitutional any longer in California.
What about landlords who have government tenants on a net lease? In other words, government agencies could theoretically end up paying a premium for taxes.
I'm sorry. Yeah, they're going to have to pay that.
Wow. That was, by the way, that was a question from Brad Desjardins.
Yeah, no, let me tell you, if you got leases where taxes are passed on, that's where it's going to. If those agreements are in place, they're going to have to. Now, a landlord can choose, Randy, to say, you know, I've got tenants that may not be able to afford some of these increases, so I'm not going to pass all of this new tax onto them because I want to keep my tenants. That could occur. Landlords have that right to do, but many of them aren't.
Which would be regressive to value.
Yeah, exactly.
The expenses would go up. Ken Turton says if the automatic reassessment occurs every 3 years, then values could also recede, correct? And he wanted to know as a corollary, I love you, Ken, this is great. Will the same person who designed the state EDD computer system also be handling the property reassessment system?
Hopefully.
I love Turton. That's great.
Yeah, that's another whole topic, and one which I'm sure we could all weigh in on because it's unbelievable. But I'm not sure what the question was.
Okay. Greg Aguirre had another question. Is the rollout of the reassessments based on a sort of lottery program such that all properties wouldn't be reassessed at the same time?
That none of that is specified within the measure. That would be how each of the counties chooses to implement. And you know, I think there's roughly a little less than 650,000 commercial properties in California, which is why LA said they're going to have to hire close to 1,000 more assessors. There'll probably be a couple, 3,000 new assessors statewide. And they, of course, need to have staff, and then and the appeal process is going to be dramatically different. I mean, this is a wholesale change of the entire property tax system in California.
John Leonard here, Rex. One more question with regard to the reassessment. Assuming it all commences at one time and properties all get reassessed, it doesn't have then a fixed maximum increase like Prop 13 of 3%. If they screw it up the first time and they don't get enough out of you, they can fix it in 3 years when they reassess.
Yeah, so this is all going to be, we're going to return to the old days of drive-by assessments or what sold down the street. And it's going to be hit and miss in a lot of places. And you're right, with them being able to, they have to reassess you within 3 years. There's no prohibition with them reassessing you more often. They just can't reassess you any less often.
Amazing. Other questions for Mr. Hime? John Shirey, take yourself off mute, John. There you go. Wait, John, your audio, you're either been inhaling helium or your audio is shot.
John, we're having a hard time understanding you.
You might have to type it into the chat box.
The secret lives of former city managers.
John was bit by a chipmunk an hour ago.
So we did talk about Rex, if I might suggest, made a strong effort at an unbiased interpretation of this proposition, and we proposed that it would be a pro and con, and I think you've done your best to do that. But generally speaking, the people that are participating on this call, and I can't speak for any one of you actually, because I don't know how you feel about it per se, but it appears to me that many of us will probably be negatively impacted should this pass. It seems to me that we need to be conscientious of this and its impact. So I appreciate everyone for participating. I made a mistake at the beginning of our call. Are there any more questions, Randy? Is there anybody typed in?
No, we're good. Thank you.
Okay, great.
I do want to add, if I may, for those of you, there's John, if you're working or you can type it in, we'll be happy to take your question.
I don't know, can I be heard now?
Yes.
You can.
Okay, well, first, I just wanted to thank you, Rex, for giving a very fair and objective presentation to us today. I know how strongly you feel about this issue, having battled it for I don't know how many decades now, but anyway, thanks for enlightening. I agree with you wholeheartedly that the so-called loophole provision should have been fixed 10 years ago, and there would sort of be less complaining about the issue now if that had been done. But my question to you is, unless I'm out of date, and this proposition aside, my understanding is that what's happened since 1979 is that the total incidence of property tax in the state has gradually shifted from residential as a whole, from commercial as a whole to residential as a whole. In other words, residential is paying a larger percentage today than it was in 1979 when it passed. And that is because residential property turns over more often than does the bulk of commercial property. So one, is that still the case? And two, do you see a way to kind of right that ship if this proposition could be defeated and it goes down? We know that the issue remains. There still is some unhappiness with both this loophole provision as well as the gradual shift that's been occurring, not by design, just by happenstance.
John, sadly, the information you have is not quite accurate. According to the Franchise Tax Board and the Board of Equalization, when they do their analyses, commercial property today is still paying more larger percentage of the overall property tax than is residential property tax. Sometimes what you'll find is that when it depends upon how you define residential. For income purposes, the bottom line is that if I own apartments and I rent those out, that's an income producing property. That is a business endeavor. If I own a house, that's a residence, okay? The residential folks actually pay a little less today than they were in 1978. And commercial continues to grow. And in reality, in LA, they found out their homes turned over less often than did commercial property when they did their study down there about 5 years ago. So I don't think we need to do anything significantly that changes Proposition 13 because it's actually working as it should. The most stable source of income for government for the last 40 years has been property tax.
Right.
And I don't think we ought to mess with that. And the percentages, when you go and you look at how the state actually does it, not when they're playing political games, is that residential homes are still being protected, as are commercial properties. And the percentages that each are paying have not shifted very much at all. As a matter of fact, commercial pays a little bit more today.
Well, thanks for that. A clarification. If you add in, multifamily rental housing to the residential base, is that still true? Or is that sort of middle class of property becoming more or less taxed over time, over the years?
That is the, if you're asking about apartments, et cetera.
Yes, I am. Yeah.
That is the group that the percentages shifts back and forth. If you were to take all of the apartments out and move them into the residential, then the residential side would be paying a whole lot more. If you leave them and treat them as they are, which is a commercial property, the percentages are a little bit more with commercial paying today. Income producing properties paying more taxes than non-income producing properties.
Okay, great. I appreciate that clarification.
Rex, Dan Ramos wanted to know if the governor's taken a position on the initiative.
And you're asking that question very nicely that Dan did not necessarily lead that, I think, because I got to read his message too. The governor, in a display of great courage, came out in support of Proposition 15 at 4:37 on a Friday afternoon. We had already been prepared for him to do that. A month before the election, when he was elected governor, 20 other business leaders and I sat in a room with him, and he was asked specifically about split roll tax because he was the only person ever running for governor that had come out and supported the concept of split roll tax. And he said, yes, I support split roll tax, but it has to be part of a comprehensive reevaluation of our tax system in California. Okay, well, obviously he's changed now because he believes we should just do split roll tax. Interestingly enough, we had been prepared for that. We had already polled on that. And for instance, when you look at what groups, if you have these people supporting you and these people opposing you, how do you do? The NAACP, because they are in opposition, they're supporting our position. That's a plus 65 to us. The governor's endorsement of Proposition 15 was only a plus 34 to their side. So, for lack of a better term, the NAACP is twice as powerful as the governor. And I'm very happy with that.
Thank you.
And one other quick thing. If you are someone who believes that this is not a good idea, the most important thing you can be doing now is talking to the folks that are in your other organization and your family, your neighbors, people standing in line at the grocery store that are 6 feet apart from you, and letting them know that this is not a good idea for California's future. That small businesses are going to be suffering and destroyed, and that we cannot have any kind of economy if we don't have them around. And if you feel guided in any way whatsoever to be more involved, perhaps financially, you can always reach out to me and I'll make sure we can work something out. And I really appreciate this opportunity to be here. I want to thank John and Randy for making this happen. And I see a lot of great names that I've known and worked with over the years and some many, many friends. So, and again, it's a great honor for me to be here speaking before this group. Thank you.
Thank you, Rex. Please, before anybody leaves the meeting, I made a mistake and I failed to introduce our wonderful sponsors, and I'd like to have an opportunity to give them a minute to introduce themselves and what they do. Isabel D'Amico actually made a comment earlier about her efforts to preserve the benefits for some of her clients. She's with D'Amico and Taylor, and I'd like to introduce her as one of our sponsors this morning. Thank you, Isabel.
Thank you, John. I just really wanted to quickly tell you guys a little bit about the D'Amico Taylor Holding Company. I was previously a member of Lambda Alpha as part of New Economics and Advisory, but at the beginning of this year, we formed the D'Amico Taylor Holding Company to connect our business interests and our community-based approach to investing. And so our subsidiaries include Taylor Builders, which was formed in 2017. Taylor Builders invests in and develops residential real estate in California. It also includes New Economics, which I'm still running, and we do economic analysis for real estate development. And finally, it includes the, well, it's not the comprehensive list, but the big ones are the Lincoln Potters Baseball Club, which is a collegiate wood bat baseball team that plays during the summer in downtown Lincoln. So I just wanted to introduce the holding company to everybody because that's really the affiliation that I'm going forward with. Thanks.
That's super. Thank you very much. And thank you also for being a sponsor with us this month. I want to remind everybody that there are sponsorship opportunities both on an annual and biannual basis, as well as monthly sponsors of our Zoom meetings, and we appreciate you. Nancy Park with Best and Krieger, are you still on? There you are.
I am. Yes,
Hi.
I am. Nancy Park. Best and Krieger is a statewide law firm plus a Washington, D.C. lobbying office. So we have over 200 attorneys across the state providing full service legal services for a variety of things, including we do some tax appeal work too. But thanks, Rex, for a great program. And it's definitely, thank you for also the call to action on what we should do, because I definitely was wondering. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy, for sponsoring this month. I think Steve Fleming is not on the call, but Steve Fleming with River City Bank is a sponsor this month, and we thank River City for their regular support and for Steve for serving on our board of directors. And I don't believe Donna Clark is on the call either. Donna Clark is with Kennedy Wilson, and we thank them for a sponsorship this month as well. My name is John Leonard. I also, Leonard Development Company sponsored. I would yield my time to Rex, but I failed to do that at the beginning. So I'll just simply say Leonard Development Company is a fee development company, and we do all different kinds of things. If you have any questions about what I do, please call me or send me an email. Thank you, Rex, for an impressive, clear presentation of the issues in front of us. And I will definitely be speaking with a face mask on to the people in line at the grocery store with me and sharing with them how their grocery costs will go up if they allow taxes to be increased on every grocery store building and every other building in the city and in the state. So with that, I want to thank everybody for participating with us this month. We're pleased to have you on board, and we look forward to seeing your renewal in November and perhaps a sponsorship. Randy, thank you for being our host as well.
Thanks, Randy.
With that, I'll bid you adieu.
Before we sign off, two things. I want to introduce our speaker for next month, but also Mark Engstrom had a question, and he says, since Prop 13, we've been migrating to a system of impact fees paid at the time of building permits and to a certain extent away from property taxes. Does Prop 15 change that dynamic in some sense?
No, Prop 15 won't change that at all. That's a whole different dynamic.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Rex. Thank you, members. Thank you, guests, for being here. Much appreciated. Next month, Jennifer West is going to be with us. We had scheduled Nikki Mohana to talk about 19J and some of her other interesting projects, but she's having a surgical procedure and will be unavailable. Jennifer is the Sacramento Film Commissioner, and she is going to talk about what it means economically and culturally to start making more movies in Sacramento. So I hope you'll all be able to join us at that time. And with that, enjoy your afternoon and have a great rest of your week.
I thank you as well. Have a great week. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Johnny.
Bye-bye.